Pragmata is a game I really had no interest in playing, and I don't know exactly what it was about it. I guess I kind of just didn't understand what the gameplay was, and the initial concept of it didn't really hook me. Plus, the game became kind of synonymous with the wrong type of crowd, but after having experienced it myself, I really like it. I think Pragmata is one of the most unique AAA games to come out in a very long time. You might have heard people saying it feels like a callback to PS2 and PS3 gaming, because the gameplay is based entirely on a gimmick, and it reminds me of something like Alan Wake, because Pragmata is essentially just a shooter, but the way it goes about executing its concept makes it a much more special and addicting type of shooter. When I'd first seen footage of Pragmata before I played it myself, I was really confused by how this would all work. Whenever you enter a combat encounter, a puzzle pops up on the right side of the screen, which you basically have to use to hack into your enemies in order to deal as much damage to them as possible with your weapon. And this hacking interface adds such a layer of depth to what should be just a simple combat encounter. I was worried that Pragmata might feel really awkward to play with this gimmick, but turns out it feels really good. Just a few minutes into the game and I'd kind of gotten a grasp of what it was all about. The way that the puzzles integrate into combat feels really natural, and eventually I just entered a sort of flow state with it. I've seen some reviews say that the hacking and shooting combo doesn't feel great, and I just don't get where that's coming from. With the combat, there's a sort of tension that I've only ever felt in survival horror games like Resident Evil and Silent Hill. Pragmata's gameplay is kind of reminiscent to tank controls, and how that added a sense of claustrophobia, as enemies are constantly approaching you and you're having to figure out the route to deal as much damage as possible to them. There's a little bit of risk and reward with Pragmata's gameplay, because if you want to deal as much hacking damage as possible, it might take slightly longer than if you were to just go for the green straight away. And I think this is such an effective way to create tension. Granted, I don't think that the game is too hard. It's actually less challenging than I expected it to be. The only times I really started to struggle was when I was surrounded by tons and tons of enemies. But if you're doing, say, a boss fight or a 3v1 or a 2v1, it's really not that big of a deal. As I said before, I got the hang of everything within the first hour. So if you are worried about the puzzle aspect of the game being too hard and you don't want to try the game for yourself, trust me, I was in the same boat. I was seeing all this gameplay from reviewers and I was shaking in my boots at the thought of a puzzle combat game, because what is that? But it really is a lot more intuitive and less puzzle, more of, as I said before, risk-reward combat. With Pragmata's story, I can't say that I was hooked from the beginning. Even now, I really don't have an interest for this world or its lore, even though there seems to be some pretty good world building here. It's just not my type of thing. But what's funny is, when you think about it, the story is kind of like the non-evil version of the Callisto Protocol. So if you're playing the game, just think on that, you'll see it too. But I don't think the story was really trying to take itself seriously at all. Most of the focus has gone towards the gameplay and the relationship between Hugh and Diana. So how about we get into that? Hugh, I think, is just a run-of-the-mill standard protagonist. There's definitely more depth to him than initially meets the eye, but he's really not anything special to me. Diana, on the other hand, is the talk of the town. So let's just get this out of the way. We all know about Pragmata's original fanbase. They kind of had an infamous sort of reputation, and they still do. The posts I've been seeing on Twitter are just actually revolting, and shame on you for that.
You should go die.
And that is one of the big reasons why I didn't care to play this game, because I'd seen this stuff online about weirdos being super hyped to see Diana, and I just didn't want to associate with those Reddit neckbeard chuds. I do think the character design is a little bit questionable. Now, I don't believe that there's anything inherently wrong with a child's feet being shown, but why does Diana have this big ass coat on and the only part of her that's uncovered is her legs and feet? I don't care if there's a lore reason behind her feet having to be out while the rest of her is covered up. It just feels a little bit weird to be playing and enjoying the game that these creeps are also enjoying, but for completely different reasons to me. And I think Capcom should have foreseen this happening. As much as I wish a game like this could come out and no one would be weird about it, that's not gonna happen. The internet is anonymous and people just talk the craziest shit because they can. But yeah, I really don't want to talk about Diana's design much more. It's just kind of uncomfortable. I think from a companion perspective, she is pretty good. There's so many different interactions you can have with her. I was surprised by how much shit you could talk about in the shelter together. And on your journey, you can find a bunch of these print designs scattered around on the space station, and you can take them back to the main hub and gift them to Diana so she can print off like a TV or a globe. It's just very clear to me that what Capcom were going for with this game was a feel-good sort of story. It feels a tad bit lower stakes than something like Dead Space. Because even though you're stuck on this terrifying space station and overwhelmed by these murderous robots, Pragmata still takes time to allow Hugh to bond with Diana. We see him go through this slow transition of someone who originally was seemingly not a huge fan of having kids.
I can't believe I missed my daughter's birthday for this. You got kids? Sounds rough.
To ending up being essentially Diana's new dad. Diana is a much younger companion than even someone like Ellie from The Last of Us or Clementine from The Walking Dead, and because of this, Hugh and Diana bond in a very special and cute sort of way. He teaches her about human emotions and the kinds of things that happen on Earth. But because this story is so lighthearted and comedic and fun, I don't think Pragmata has much of a chance of being my game of the year. Like, at best, it's a 7 or 8 out of 10. It's a very solid and welcome surprise of a game release. As I said before, I think the gameplay is fantastic, and it may be the best of the year in that regard. But overall, the world, it didn't hook me in enough. The story didn't have much tension behind it for the most part. But that's all okay, because not every game has to be a masterpiece. I think Pragmata stands on its own 2 feet, and it does what it sets out to do, which is provide a really weird and unique gimmick for gameplay, and a really adorable relationship between the 2 protagonists. The story is sweet and short. I think it runs on average between 10 to 13 hours, and it just feels like good old Capcom. They're on such a crazy run right now because they had RE9 a few months ago, and now they've got this. They're just providing us with these super nice and linear stories with a huge emphasis on gameplay, and I can't ask for much more than that. That's pretty much it for this video. If you did enjoy, do consider subscribing and liking to show your support. I hope you have a great rest of your day/night, and I'm gonna clock out now. See ya.